Hey bud, assalamu alaikum. Today I wanted to talk to you about how you can create healthy relationships in your life without feeling like your relationships are going to start negatively affecting you. I want you to explore your relationships from a place of abundance. I've had my fair share of unhealthy relationships from family, friends, coworkers, the list goes on. And I interacted with these relationships from a place of fear, shame, and scarcity. I realized that they weren't really serving me and it was holding me back. And I wanted to switch from this survival mindset to a thriving mindset. So there was many things that I had to unlearn, but there's also some tools that I was able to accumulate and obtain, and I've been practicing. That's helped me create and maintain healthy relationships in my life. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before I get started, if you're new here, welcome to Growing with Danyal. I'm a social worker that's been helping people and organizations grow for about 8 years now. Over here, we talk about everything related to mental health, personal development, and community organizing. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, consider subscribing. Let's get started. So in my late teens and early 20s, I was going through all these emotions that were surfacing in my life. I was a very angry person, and most people couldn't tell because I just learned to suppress it very well. But it would come out during high modes of stress, or when I was not able to suppress it, when I was in my weak points, right? When I was at the bottom of the valley. And there was a time where I was having an argument with a family member, a loved one, and I behaved very unkindly. Now, I basically raised my voice, right? And I remember at that time, I remember how disgusted I was in my behavior, mainly because I have a set of beliefs and values, or basically agreements that I've made with myself. And one of the main agreements in my life is that no matter who's in front of me, I will remain kind. I will not use my words to hurt someone. I will not use my words or my hands to hurt someone. It's an agreement that I've made with myself. There's a difference between being kind, there's a difference between being nice. There's a difference between defending yourself and actively attacking someone, right? This is a decision that I've made in my life, and I've actively been practicing. At that time, I believe I didn't behave kindly. I was really shaken up by that experience, and I realized I needed to go to therapy. And it had nothing to do with the person that I was upset with, but it was mainly about I didn't like how much power that person had over me. And I knew I needed to work on this because this is not what I wanted for myself in the future. So I found a therapist and I started going to therapy. And one of the main things that I realized is that I was not able to establish and enforce and maintain consistent boundaries in my life. And I noticed commonalities between different relationships that I had, whether it was my friends, coworkers, boss, family members, my spouse, that depending on what the dynamics looked like and what the issue was, I was having a hard time establishing boundaries. And being able to start working on that and start identifying that, I started noticing a huge shift that one thing we had to realize is that relationships are giving and taking. It's not just giving and it's not just taking. So the fundamentals of healthy relationships, I actually talk about in my previous video. I would encourage you to pause and watch that. But one of the main things I talk about is having mutual respect, right? A relationship requires both parties to contribute. It doesn't matter what dynamic it is. Don't let anyone else tell you differently. If your relationship with your children, your parents, your boss, your coworkers, your friends, and your siblings, the relationship with those around you are fundamentally tied by certain foundational elements. One of the main ones being trust and respect, right? And in order for you to nurture those things, there needs to be a give and take, not just always giving, not just always taking. Boundaries will also make sure that your mental health is going to be better, your wellness is going to be better. Remember I talked to you about this earlier? I realized that I was coming from a place of fear, shame, and scarcity. Boundaries help create a safe space for you to start unlearning things, right? It gives you space, like a sandbox, for you to explore in within inside it. So then you start being able to work on yourself better, and then you're going to get to a point where you're just going to start leveling up. You're going to start thriving, and you'll start seeing your relationships from a place of abundance, with you being an equal factor, if not a more important factor, in all the dynamics and all the relationships that you see yourself in. Some of the most effective people that I know, some of the most reliable people, had strong boundaries. There's a person I know, a coworker of mine who is a good friend of mine, an old coworker of mine, who used to come 5 o'clock every morning to work and leave 2 o'clock. And it was inconvenient for all the people who worked without boundaries, and they would be upset at times, like, oh, there's such a rigid schedule. But everyone in the team respected this person, loved this person, would have great things to say about this person, and you knew that if you gave this person something to do, you don't have to worry about it. It will get done. So this is an example of boundaries done well. How do you know when you need to be establishing boundaries in your relationships? One of the first things you should think about is how you're feeling, and does it align with your actions? So it's hard to understand when you need to establish boundaries, because most of the time we're in these cycles in relationships, these patterns that we have created or we have learned in our childhood. So it's basically all that we know. So it's very hard at times. But so I want you to just simplify it and just focus on the feelings, right? Because if you are working on your relationship with yourself, you're able to notice, you're at a point now where you're noticing the cues in your body. So I want you to think about, how are you feeling and what you're actually doing, and does it align? So for example, if you're noticing that you're feeling like swelling of anger in your chest, but you're saying yes to something, that might be a problem. If you're starting to notice that you're getting a little bit bitter when you're talking to someone, or you're working with someone, but you're smiling in their face, or you're still complying to what's being asked of you, or you're saying yes to things, there's a problem there, right? That's like the most basic thing I can say. But after that, it would be, do you notice that there is just giving, or taking, right? So remember what I mentioned earlier, there's a give and take. Some people only make boundaries when someone keeps taking from them. Like if I have a family member who's just asking for favors, and I'm just giving, then at a certain point, we'll be like, you know what, I need to stop giving, right? That's like usually what people are used to. But there's also the opposite. There are people who get super involved in your life and overwhelm you with kindness and help and all these other things, right? But they also lack boundaries. And then what ends up happening is there's something there and you're feeling a little uncomfortable. You feel like, oh my God, this person is literally, in all of my business, getting involved in everything, asking me questions that make me feel uncomfortable. And I feel compelled to answer because I feel like I need to, because they're just being nice. No, that's also a problem. That also requires you to establish some boundaries. So start focusing on how things are making you feel, and is the action aligning with that? That's the main thing I want you to think about, and use that as your reference point. Now that we know why boundaries are important, how to know if you need to start establishing boundaries, let's actually talk about practically what does establishing boundaries look like. Remember that one of my core values is being kind. So when I'm trying to establish boundaries, I like to come from a place of kindness. It reinforces the boundary for me. It makes me feel confident because it aligns with my values, that I'm doing my best to wordsmith, and I'm not really trying to actively hurt or harm someone, right? I know that sometimes boundaries may hurt people's feelings, but as long as you do your part to be compassionate, then some of people's reactions is on themselves. So try to avoid using accusatory language and overgeneralizing language. I try to focus more on me rather than putting the blame on them. So let's come up with some examples on what that would look like. For a family example, let's say you're always asking me to do things at the wrong times, and I'm tired of it. I have my own stuff I need to do. Probably not the best way to handle something like that. What you're trying to communicate to someone is, hey, I want to help you, but I need to do it at my own time. So a way of establishing a boundary is, why don't we come up with a list of things that need to get done, and I will tackle it as soon as I'm available. How about Sunday when I don't have work? You just established boundaries. You do not blame them for everything, right? You communicated how you want to receive and give love, right? In this case, how you want to give love, right? So let's use an example for friends. Every time we hang out, you want to hang out at your place, but when I reach out, you're always not wanting to come to my place. It's a valid concern. You feel like they're not meeting you where you're at, you're always putting the extra effort, and there's an imbalance in the relationship. Not cool. A better way of saying it is, hey, the next time we meet, I would like for you to come to my place instead. If you're not available that day, let's find a day that does work for you to start coming to my place. I would really like to show hospitality and start having you come over here too, so we can have some time in both places at whatever way you want to say it, right? But you're getting the gist of it, right? You're explaining how, I need you to start coming here. I understand that sometimes it's inconvenient, so let me know when it is convenient, but you're not sacrificing what you want. So a work example can be something along the lines of, hey, you're always taking credit for my work and I just don't feel like I can work with you anymore. That's overgeneralizing. You're accusing them. It's not really the right way of going about it. A better way is, hey, I'm personally invested in this project just as much as you are. I've noticed that you haven't been including me in certain conversations, or I've noticed that when it comes to reporting to the supervisors, it's very clear that I'm not included in those reports. I don't think I'll be able to continue working on this project if this continues. I'm equally invested in the success of this project, and I would like that to be reflected in the reports and the work that we're doing and in the updates that we're providing. We should do them together. So, that way you're basically explaining how this is making you feel, what the consequence of the action is going to be, and what you would like to see as an ideal case scenario that works for both of you. So I just want you to be aware that you're gonna have to expect pushback, right, when it comes to establishing boundaries. And there's a few things to keep in mind when tackling that pushback. The first thing being that you're going to have to manage the guilt that you're feeling. If you're not used to establishing boundaries, you're going to feel very guilty. And some hurtful people are going to take advantage of that and double down and find ways to hurt you. You need to navigate that and manage that. Remember that establishing boundaries is not hurting people. It's you trying to communicate how you want to receive love. And you're deserving of love, and if you haven't worked on that, you need to work on that first. But when you understand that yes, you are deserving of love, being able to communicate that is a very innocent thing. So remember that. You are deserving of respect, trust, and an equal part of whatever relationship you partake and participate in. So keep that in mind. The second thing that I want you to keep in mind is just finding ways to deal with the resistance. And how do you respond when people are going to say things like, but you always did it, why are you changing right now? I bet it was that friend of yours, or I bet this, or what's going on? You're being weird, you're being different, right? Yeah, I realize that I shouldn't have been doing that. I need to start taking care of myself. Yeah, I know, but things have changed. I realize how much this is hurting me, and I need to prioritize myself. Yes, and it doesn't mean that I love you any less, but this is very important to me, and I hope you recognize and respect that. It's come from a place of mercy, but do not compromise yourself. Explain yourself and double down on the boundary. If they love you, if they respect you, they will reciprocate accordingly. But then there's consequences for if you are not able to follow along with the user manual, right? In my case, I'm not going to attack you. I'm not going to shout at you. I'm not going to cuss you out. I'm never going to be disrespectful. But what I do know is I'm going to give you less of my love. And it is what it is. I have communicated, right, through my actions and my words and through my behavior that these are my boundaries. And if you do not respect them, and if you're not honoring them, then I know you don't respect me, and you're not willing to honor me, and we have lost trust at that point. And therefore, I'm going to reduce the love that I'm able to give to you. Why? Because at the end of the day, the most important thing for me is to behave in a manner that I know is pleasing to the higher power that I believe in, right? But in case you don't believe in a higher power, the way that you want to see yourself live, right? Your ideal version of you, right? Just think about what that looks like. In order for you to thrive and not survive, you need to create that safe environment around you. And if that means pulling yourself back from some people, then you gotta do what you gotta do. Now I know this topic is scary for some of you, especially those of you that are going through this for the first time. But it's important to recognize that these things are actually really beautiful things. Boundaries, if done properly, actually help deepen your relationship with the people around you because it helps them understand you better, right? And it requires vulnerability, it requires bravery, and it requires consistency. Now, I can talk about relationship for hours, and I plan to do so in future videos where we talk about the different nuances of relationships in the How to Connect series. But before that, or more importantly, you need to first be working on your relationship with yourself. So I encourage you to actually watch some of my other videos, in particular, the How to Grow series, where I talk about just that. And remember, with everything in life, it is a journey, so take it a step at a time. All right? All right. Be well. Bye.